I have some loved ones that have had to stop talking to their blood relatives because of issues like this, and it sucks. It really, really sucks. And these people aren't just doing it on a whim. It's very painful and it's hard. So again, for the conservatives that are watching this, they're still with me. You have to understand, we're not just doing this because of misguided reasons or because we're being self-righteous. It's like, no, we feel like you're being very bigoted and narrow-minded and reductive to other people's experiences while trying to benefit yourself, and you're infringing on other people's ability to exist while claiming the victim, even though nothing is being taken away from you, right? It's a really crappy experience to go through and to witness. Now, this video we've got to talk about. I think it's a good one. I have not watched the whole entire thing because I want to share that with you. But something I can say is that it is hard to lose loved ones to various issues, whether it be social or political. It could be something else. And that's not something that I take very lightly. And I don't think it's something that we should be practicing with indiscriminate actions, right? I think it's something that we should be really strongly considering before we just cut somebody off from our life. I, in the past, have been somebody that has cut off people for various reasons, whether it be very extreme and serious or something a little more petty because I was too sensitive at the time, right? I don't want to act like I'm some sort of bastion of great emotions, right? I've evolved over time and I've learned to forgive people that I have had a very hard time being around in the past, some of the family, some of the friends, etc. So I'm in a place now where I think it's very important to not just cut off people who you disagree with. Herein lies the crux of this specific issue. I've had this discussion a lot on social media, on my Facebook channel and with other people, and my family, my immediate family and I have experienced this with our own close family, more so on my in-law side, where we have had to cut off people from our life because of who they are associating with. I like focusing on people who don't agree with me. So I'm talking specifically to people who are in the MAGA boat or people who are just general Trump supporters, not just conservatives or Republicans, because not every single one of them does like Trump or supports what he's doing. However, similar to other movements, like I'm not a supporter of the ACAB movement, right? All cops are bad, or worse, however you want to use the B. However, I understand and can empathize with that movement because there is a sentiment of, if you're not shaming what's happening and you're affiliated with that group, then you are part of the problem, even if you aren't the problem yourself, right? And that is the crux of the issue, because I've had some comments already on my YouTube channel. I've been uploading the YouTube reactions that I've had of my conversations of reacting to videos, and I've already had, whether it be bots or trolls or legitimate people, I've had some conversations in the comments, and I think some of these people are legitimate. However, I think some of these people have a worldview that can't relate to other worldviews outside of that. That's why I'm focusing specifically on MAGA and in general conservatives, because I don't want to talk to an actual echo chamber. I don't want to talk to people who just agree with me, and I don't want to talk specifically to Democrats and liberals. One thing I like to mention at the beginning of all of my videos is that I'm not a Democrat. I don't consider myself liberal. So please, if you're watching this video, do not call me a liberal. Do not call me a Democrat, because I don't associate with those groups. I have been very critical and I will continue to be critical. And when Trump is not a problem anymore, I will go back to being very critical of Democrats and Republicans or any politicians as a whole. So if I see in the comments someone calling me a liberal or a Democrat, I'm not going to engage with you. I'm sorry. I got way more comments than I was expecting. The videos went big faster than I thought they were going to. And so I have been replying to every single comment that I've seen for the most part, unless it's just like a one-letter word or something. But moving forward, I'm not going to be engaging with people who aren't actually watching my videos, because you're wasting my time and not respecting my time, because you're articulating yourself, you're expressing yourself without the context of the full video. So just let that be known one more time. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a liberal. Liberal? I'm not a liberal. Okay, so let's move on from there. We talked about separating ourselves from our loved ones, right? And I've seen people judging those who are separating themselves from MAGA. And the reason why I want to talk about this video and why this topic and this video is because I am someone who does not like to separate myself for very petty reasons. However, if you're someone who can't understand this, if you're someone who supports Donald Trump and thinks that people are being petty or being narrow-minded, I need you to understand that people who are opposed to Donald Trump aren't just opposed to him, aren't just hating him just to hate him. They aren't hating him because he's just a conservative or Republican. Personally, I don't think he's either of those things. But either way, it's important to understand that from our perspective, right? I'm going to speak from my perspective. I don't want to say our right now. I want to just talk about me specifically, but hopefully other people who do think like me can articulate that for themselves and say whether they agree or disagree. But from my perspective, and this is going to piss off people right out of the gate, but I want you to stay with me, right? I want you to just put yourself out of your MAGA hat for a second and think about things from another person's perspective. And even if you don't agree, even if you don't believe what I'm saying, just assume it's correct from my own worldview, okay? Just do that for me so that we can have actual useful dialogue. What I want to explain is that the people like myself who are separating ourselves from people who support Donald Trump or the MAGA movement as a whole, we see Donald Trump in a variety of ways, right? For me personally, again, to focus on my perspective. One, I believe Donald Trump is a bigot, right? And even if he himself is not a bigot, right? Let's just assume he's not a bigot. He is supporting things that discriminate against certain groups of people. And it is pretty broad. You know, it gets into women, it gets into the LGBTQ, which are both areas I can't really speak on. It gets into people of color. It gets into immigrants, which are areas that I can express myself on as a first generation American, Jamaican American, Jamaican Indian American technically, and Scottish, but very, very small amounts of Scottish actually. But either way, I can speak on those sides. Even if we're granting that Donald Trump is not a bigot, which I think he is, I think he's permitting a lot of policies or a lot of things in place, like he's making a lot of changes that do not support us, that do not support people like me. And people who are supporting Donald Trump and, you know, the whole Project 2025, all of that stuff, we see him as somebody who is actually a threat to our safety, a threat to our democracy, a threat to our freedom of speech, right? So even if you just stay with me, even if you disagree with me, I need you to understand that I, from my perspective, feel that way. And if you felt that way, how would you react? If you felt like just criticizing let's say Muslims, let's say that if you criticize Muslims, which maybe some of you guys have experienced this in the past, but if you criticize a Muslim, then you could be labeled a terrorist, right? Not just hate speech, not just being a bigot, you're labeled as a terrorist. Right now, there is a memorandum that has been sent through from the president. It's on the official whitehouse.gov website, written by Donald Trump, that if you criticize Christianity or if you criticize conservatives, if you associate with Antifa, which that is also misrepresented, right? You can be labeled a terrorist. Like, that's not me being hyperbolic. You can go to whitehouse.gov and read this for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it, right? We talked about that in the past and I can break it down later on, but just understand that this is not a hyperbolic statement I'm making. These are real statements. I am an atheist. I do not believe in a Christian God. Even if there was a God that existed, I don't think it'd be one of the books that exists in Earth or on Earth right now. So for me to be able to criticize a religion that is very prominent in America, just doing this here, I technically, because of how loose it's worded, I could be labeled a terrorist, right? So put yourself in those shoes of you couldn't criticize things. I'm not talking about the social aspect of it. Cancel culture is a social aspect. It is not a government or federal aspect, right? If I try to get you fired because I think you said something bigoted, that is not the government. That is me being a social entity, right? A citizen. But this is the government labeling me as a threat to our country, right? A terrorist basically makes you a traitor to your country and makes you very dangerous. You're labeled dangerous. So I need you to understand that from my perspective, the president is condoning this, right? He is allowing this to happen. And from my perspective, as someone who does not buy that ideology, I'm not allowed technically to criticize it. Or if I do, I have to accept the fact that I can be labeled as a terrorist. So if you were in that situation, right? And please, a lot of people, I'm not a fan of Biden, just to throw it out there. But even if I was, right, Biden never did something like this. He may have personally expressed how he felt about things, but please, if you disagree, if you think that he labeled people a terrorist because they criticize Democrats, find that for me before I even bother to engage with you. Don't just word it, right? Don't type it out. Show me an official government article, right, on like us.gov or government, the whitehouse.gov that backs up what you're saying. Because again, I'm not marketing my content towards Democrats and liberals. I'm marketing my content towards conservatives because I want to talk to you. I don't want to talk at you. I want to talk to you. But in order to do that, I need you guys to also hear my perspective. And one of the reasons why I tend to agree with a lot of people, and I think one of the funny things about my more recent videos that I've been uploading is that I don't get mad very easily. I need you to understand this, okay? And I need you to stay with me. I don't get mad easily. I tend to be fairly composed. I'm somebody that thrives in chaos. When shit hits the fan, when things are very chaotic at work or in my personal life, that is my inner zen, right? I try not to make those situations happen. I try to be more calm in calm situations, but I need you to understand that. And that's why I think across the country and even across the world, I've built relationships with so many people because I've had conversations with extreme conservatives. I've had conversations with skinheads or former skinheads. I've had conversations with people who are openly bigoted, and I've talked to them with non-judgment. So I am somebody that is able to have conversations with people of all walks of life, people who believe in all kinds of things. If you don't know me, you might not know that. And you might just think I'm some angry black person just yelling at the wind, but that's not who I am. I am somebody that likes discourse, but I have to express that there are sometimes lines that have to be drawn in the sand. And when I feel like you are supporting somebody who is a bigot, right? Let's say a racist, a transphobe, a homophobe, sexist, misogynist, trying to protect pedophiles and people who are, pedos and SAs, that kind of stuff. From my perspective, I think that he either is those things or supports those kinds of behavior and protects people who do those things, So if you can't understand that, if you can't acknowledge that and understand how, from my worldview, I don't want to associate with people who support that, you probably are a lost cause if you're not willing to make that extra step. But for the people who are still with me, the people who are still listening, I need you to think from that lens, right? And we can argue or debate about the validity of statements that I make. But that's why I'm doing these videos in general, to point these out and to show you and to break things down from my perspective, but to also try to use logic and rationale behind what I'm saying. And the hard part is, especially when we're talking about topics like Charlie Kirk, some of these can't be boiled down to statistics and facts. Some of this is going to be an experiential thing. Like when it comes to the Black experience, there is a lot of context and a lot of history that has to be taken into consideration before you just brush it off or dismiss it as something. DEI is one of those topics where it is very hard to have a conversation about it with people who don't understand what DEI is. And there's multiple levels of it because people misrepresent what DEI is. The same thing with critical race theory and affirmative action. They misinterpret what it does and also make assumptions about the intention of it. In my last Charlie Kirk video that I uploaded, Kirk himself explains why he thinks DEI was in place. And we're not going to get into it today. That's not the point of today's video. But to illustrate my point, Charlie Kirk had no information to back that up. But he just made this big conspiracy theory and tried to rationale it, right? Tried to make it a logical argument. And if you buy into his philosophy, then you're almost a lost cause because you're bought into something that you can't prove. And if I try to give you an opposing viewpoint, then you're not going to accept it no matter what I do. And it is very hard to explain things, specifically racial issues, to white people. And I've had so many conversations, I swear to you, I can't express that. I've had lots of these and I plan on having more, where people they cannot comprehend things and they just choose to believe things from their perspective. So now let's move forward with that in mind, right? I wanted to give that's a long preamble, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to express that because the comments that I've been getting, as much as I'm happy that my videos are going as fast as they are, I'm not trying to make money off of this. If it happens, then great. But I'm not trying to get views off of this. I'm trying to actually make some progress here. And I want to express that I'm deeply concerned for the state of our country and the state of my safety and my family's safety. And also I'm deeply concerned for the future of our country, for when I'm long dead and my son is left here to walk on this earth without the guidance of his parents. So I have an investment in trying to bridge that gap and have a conversation. But I also like to be very open and honest that I can't respect you and I don't think you're a moral person if you support Donald Trump. That said, just because I'm saying that does not mean I'm not willing to cross that bridge and have a discussion with you, but I like being honest about how I feel about people. And again, just to emphasize this before we move on to the video, I don't tend to disassociate with people. I don't cut people out of my life for very small reasons, right? It takes a lot. You have to basically prove that you are a hateful human being and have no intentions of improving yourself as a person. And that's what, in a nutshell, the MAGA people are to me, the people who support Donald Trump. So with that in mind, let's go to this video. Again, this is Rick Shrum. This is on his official channel. This was sent from a member of the community. It's called Losing Loved Ones to MAGA. And that's why I had that long preamble. And that's also why I wanted to just kind of clear that out, just so I can sift out the trolls in my comments a little easier. By doing this preamble, I'll know who actually watched the video and who is either a bot, a troll, or just being a hateful human being because they don't want to actually make any progress. So let's get into this video here. Oh, one last thing before we get started, I do want to say again, thank you. I mentioned earlier that my numbers have been growing very fast. In less than a day, I had like 500 views on my last video with zero marketing. I have not been sharing it out too often, except for like a handful of friends and some family. So the fact that I'm already getting up to 500 views, which I was expecting double-digit numbers. Thank you guys so much. And if you can continue to like and subscribe to these videos, I don't want to have arguments in the comments, but I do want to have some discourse, and I don't want to be scaled one way too much over the other. So to offset some of the trolls and the bots that are probably, commenting on these, please give a like and a share and a subscribe to help support this channel so that I can keep doing what I like doing. All right, with that in mind, let's go on.
Have you lost any friends or family members to MAGA?
So coming from a Mexican household, I have a lot of uncles that are business owners, and at some point their decision was to follow that crowd for what they believe was going to be beneficial for them financially. I think we're starting to wake up now. I'd say we, because it's still my family. They're starting to wake up when our cousins are getting, deported or pulled over. They're mostly out in Elgin, Carpentersville, and that's one of the places that ICE kind of started hitting in May and April, May, when they just started. So I think at that point, a lot of, I've been keeping more in contact with them, at least by text messages, making sure that they're okay. So I don't know if their opinions have changed based on their financial needs, but I do know that it's becoming more obvious that this is a problem because we're losing our family members.
Right.
Yeah.
And what have those conversations been like?
Not bad. But that's just my own personal. I'm able to remove myself easily from conversations with my family members. That's just, yeah. There's been no like yelling matches, no struggles.
So this actually brings up a point that kind of has a timeline split for me, right? So I'm kind of in the boat with this guy. My parents are not conservative, but I have had some very big disagreements with them in the past about topics that we are very philosophically opposed on. And my dad's from Jamaica, my mom's she's black and from Atlantic City, New Jersey. She grew up in like a 2 or 3 bedroom house with 7 other siblings, and I want to say just her mom. I grew up in a house where we argued a lot. And at a certain point in my life, in my 20s, I stopped talking to my parents. We now have a healthy relationship, and we do yell. That's kind of the family we grew up in. So very rarely do I actually yell at people outside of my blood family. My mom and my dad primarily. My sister and my brother, I don't yell at them. We don't have that kind of relationship like that. So we get along fairly well now. When I was younger, different story. However, on the other side of my family, on my in-law family, I haven't had any shouting matches, but without getting into all the specifics, I've had to separate myself from them because I've tried having these conversations with them, and they've been mostly peaceful conversations, at least on my end and from my experience on the other end. And it's tough because I see them not making an effort. When it's specifically one person, to kind of narrow it down, that really is an issue, and then maybe one other person, but for a different issue. And it's hard because these people are a lot more passive or passive aggressive, and I used to be very non-confrontational, but in my family, we were always confrontational, both physically and verbally, right? And I hated that, but I didn't realize that I had been building a muscle of defending myself when I get mad, right? My fight reflex kicks in, and I don't usually like run away nowadays. I'm ready to fight verbally. And, you know, nowadays it's not really relevant to my life. I live in a great neighborhood, but like physically as well, if that ever came to it. I didn't notice when I flipped that switch and I got more confident. And when I heard people saying things that I disagreed with, I would kind of go back to that, you know, I'd hear my mom say something dumb, because I love to study different cultures. My mom would get mad at me and say, hey, like, don't use that white people logic, you know, like using information when she was younger. She hated that, right? That was kind of like an insult to blackness, right? And feel how you want about that. I'm just letting you know my experience. I've criticized that tremendously over the years, and that's not something that she really says or does anymore. She reads, educates herself now, which is great. But because I was confrontational and I learned how to keep my composure enough to use rationale and reason and spot when people have inconsistencies with their storylines, because people will lie, people will change their story midway, people will I've seen some crazy stuff, both from my own family and other people, where they'll say something, you'll call it out, you'll prove them wrong, and then they will lie and say they didn't say that thing, or they'll tweak what they said. And it's like, bro, can we acknowledge what you first said before we move on with like the fact that you're now changing reality? And so it sucks when you have that experience. And, you know, it's great when you don't have to deal with it in your own personal life, but you still see that. It sounds like this guy, you know, he's not having that in his own personal life, but he is aware enough to know that other people are experiencing this, because you see that. And, you know, I have some loved ones that have had to stop talking to their blood relatives because of issues like this. And it sucks. It really, really sucks. And these people aren't just doing it on a whim. It's very painful and it's hard. So again, for the conservatives that are watching this, they're still with me. You have to understand, we're not just doing this because of misguided reasons or because we're being self-righteous. It's like, no, we feel like you're being very bigoted and narrow-minded and reductive to other people's experiences while trying to benefit yourself, and you're infringing on other people's ability to exist while claiming the victim, even though nothing is being taken away from you, right? It's a really crappy experience to go through and to witness.
Have you lost any friends or family members to MAGA?
Oh yeah, they're friends, not family. I come from an entire family of immigrants. Me and my siblings are first generation here, so we're all products of immigrants, and so I've lost friends. A lot of former military, a lot of friends that I grew up with. That I've noticed that the ones that think they've got a nice little penny in the bank now are the ones that all of a sudden forget who or what benefits them truly. You know, none of us are making $5 million a year. There's no reason we're voting for the tax cuts that they're giving or trying to give. It's stupid. Right. It doesn't benefit us at all. So why would you even think to vote that way?
Have you lost any friends or family members to MAGA?
Have I lost any?
Yeah.
Friends, yes. Family, no. We just don't talk about it.
And what was the breaking point with the friends where they sort of went further right?
I'm just tired. I don't need it. I don't need that in my life. I don't need negativity. I'm going to focus on the positive stuff. And they can find their own way. I have some friends that have circled back, and they're like, "Oh, you were so right." I'm like, so it takes time, education, and having this happen.
Right. What was that moment where they circled back?
They saw their friends and neighbors being drugged out of places, and the conversations that they're having with people, and they're being denied, they're being treated poorly, so they're not understanding why, so they have to re-examine themselves.
I was initially thinking, I wish the way the guy answered originally would not have done anything for a conservative or a Trump supporter watching that video. Also, just a quick aside, I'm sorry, sometimes I use Republican and conservative incorrectly, or I interchange them, and I'm trying to reduce that. I'm trying to specifically say MAGA just as people who support Donald Trump and his movement, because I don't want to lump in the whole group of people. I've had some very valid comments in my YouTube channels about this, and so I'm trying to, as best as I can, to not use conservative and Republican just in general when I'm talking about Trump supporters, because that's a very specific group of people that don't apply to the whole entire group. So I'm sorry in advance if I keep doing that during this video, but just know that I'm trying to use the proper, is it a pronoun? I don't know. I'm trying to use the proper terminology here. So just understand that I call that out, right? I'm very big on integrity. So calling out my own hypocrisy is really important to me, and understand that. So back to the point though. His original answer, the person in the hat here, his original answer didn't really give much to people who don't already agree with him. Like, I totally understood. I totally could feel where he was coming from. However, I'm thinking, like, how does this help people who don't already think like that? Right. That's the issue. And I've got to say, I've watched a lot of Rick Strum's videos. His follow-up question made a world of difference, in my opinion. I mean, there's only so much you can really do, but the question about what was that turnaround point for them was really great, because now the person in the hat, for some reason I think Where's Waldo, like a rainbow, Where's Waldo, but the person in the hat, he had to give an example to really help illustrate the severity of the situation. And when you're just saying, oh, I just didn't want that negativity in my life, negativity alone is enough of a reason, in my opinion, to separate yourself from people. I'm sorry if you disagree, but when you're trying to work on yourself, when you're trying to build yourself up, when you're trying to better your own life, and you're trying to, move in your career or whatever it may be, negativity can really drag you down. And being around that all the time, that stuff is infectious. It is contagious. And that alone is enough of a reason. However, because we're talking about something more political, a lot of people take issue when you're separating yourself or not associating with people who have opposing viewpoints. And it's not just that. He has given the illustration that people are being ripped from their families. That is a very visceral illustration that people can relate to. So obviously, if you deny that ICE is being heavy-handed with their actions, you're still going to deny it. However, you can't deny the fact that it is a very valid reason for someone to separate themselves from people who are okay with bigotry, right? I'm being very brief just to not have to say all the words, but essentially bigotry, people being ripped from their homes, dictator type behavior, right? Fascist behavior. So hopefully that's a good illustration, because again, credit to Rick Strum for the follow-up question. I think that was really great.
No, I mean, I'm here because I'm kind of the privileged, few around now, the white guy. So I mean, I haven't had any. I mean, I'm sure I grew up in this city. I went to Catholic school in this city. I'm sure there's many people that I know that I'm just not in contact with anymore that have gone and aren't around. Like my parents live in the Midway neighborhood, and that's where I grew up. So I mean, just to see this stuff and to come back, just to be driving around and just see it's everybody uses the term dystopian, and that's exactly what it is.
Have you lost any friends or family members to MAGA?
I lost a lot of employees. I have a cleaning business in the Chicagoland area. So I have a lot of employees that are undocumented, but they're just looking to work to support their families, doing cleanings, and a lot of them just didn't make it to work one day. So I lost a lot of employees, and we're still looking for individuals that we can't even find, We also have a little restaurant that we're starting up in Chicago, and we just installed cameras there, and we saw firsthand ICE just picking up individuals out of nowhere. So it really hit home, and it's really hitting our business, and enough's enough.
What's the name of your businesses?
The cleaning business is Ultimate Building Cleaning Services, and like I said, it's just hitting us firsthand, and we're trying to do everything possible to make sure everyone's safe, and that's become a difficult task.
Have you lost?
So this is a little bit off topic of the main point of my video. However, I do think it's worth me touching on and circling back to something that Trump said himself. Like, I like calling back to the source. And Trump himself said that they're going to be focusing on the dangerous immigrants that are here illegally. And somewhere along the lines that shifted. And there's two trains of thought I have here. One, I can totally acknowledge, and I don't know the legality of it, of him admitting that he has undocumented people working there. And I can also personally feel like it is not that big of a deal to have undocumented immigrants here, and he's, having an employee. So you might hate the fact that I'm okay with that. However, we also have to point out that Trump himself said that he was going to be focusing on dangerous criminals, not people who are just working their lives and doing something. A gang member is not going to also be having a job with somebody who is a citizen, and they're not going to be in the day, moonlighting as a gangster while doing cleaning services. Like they're just trying to support their family, and then hopefully eventually, go through the right channels and get a citizenship. And yeah, I can totally call out that, hey, they should not be here illegally. They should go and do things the proper way. But life is not that easy and not that black and white. Do you follow the speed limit all the time? You're going exactly the speed limit. You're not going over. You're not going like 10 miles over the speed limit on the highway. When it says 70, you're not hitting 80. You don't do any of that. You never had some people call it a hot box or a cable box back in the day in order to get the scrambled channels when you're a kid. I'm sorry if you're a Gen Z or beyond, you might not know what the hell I'm talking about. But for people who are my age, millennials and backwards, you might know about that. Have you never bought a bootleg CD? Have you never downloaded a movie before? So I find it incredibly hypocritical of these people who want to act like they're saints because someone came here illegally and they're not doing anything violent. They're just trying to make a living, right? So again, that is a little bit far off of the main point of the video, which is, separating yourself from people that support MAGA. But I do want to express that because I am first generation. My dad came here legally, as far as I'm aware. He had a citizenship. My grandmother had a dual citizenship. I remember going to the airport to pick her up from the airport and dropping her off with my dad and my brother every couple of years, and going to Vineland, New Jersey, and visiting my grandma, my aunt, my uncle, and then seeing some of my other family. Like a lot of Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans lived in Vineland, New Jersey, so I had a lot of immigrant family up there. So it holds a special place in my heart. And I did grow up around a lot of crime. I had relatives that sold bootleg DVDs on the streets of Atlantic City. Some of them are, unfortunately passed by now, so there's nothing that can happen to them legally. But it feels incredibly naive and incredibly entitled for people to act like everyone follows every single law all the time, 24/7. I'm sorry, I'm a realist. I gotta say it like it is. Not everyone is following the law all the time, and if you are someone that does that, then good on you. I'm not saying it's okay to break the law, but if I'm an atheist, but let ye without sin be the first to throw the cast the first stone, right? Don't act like you don't sin or break the law ever. I'm sorry, I have a hard time believing that. Maybe I'm just being cynical in this moment, but yeah, that's what I believe.
Friends or family members to MAGA and Donald Trump?
A few, but I'm still working on trying to bring them back around.
And what was the moment that they sort of broke away in your eyes?
Kind of on the Israel topic, and they just couldn't seem to recognize that it's a genocide and it's just freak shit going on. Pardon my French.
We're past that point. And another question I have for you: do you know who Joe Rogan is?
Yes.
What do you think of Joe Rogan?
A useful idiot. Yeah, I don't get it. He's just stupid. Yeah.
And lastly, what do you think the Democrats could be doing better?
Actually do something. Stop allowing this to continue. Actually listen to the people. And just, I don't know, they do a lot of hand sitting. They allowed this to happen, so they need to do more. They need to do a lot more. Yeah.
Agreed.
I want to do a video on this at some point, but I'm trying to prioritize here. But I have a lot of criticisms for the Democratic Party that I've expressed publicly. It's overshadowed by all of my criticisms of MAGA and the Republican Party right now. But I'll just briefly touch on, I feel the same way that he feels about a lot of this because I'm trying to prioritize the people, right? I gave an analogy before. If someone is threatening your city with a nuke and then somebody keeps putting cherry bombs in your toilet, which is a higher priority at that moment, right? Is it the person putting the cherry bombs in the toilet, or is it the person with a nuke that's about to blow up your shit? So that's sort of the analogy. It's very hyperbolic, and I'm sorry, but it helps to illustrate the point that I'm trying to make, is that there's a lot of people who have criticisms of the Democratic Party, but right now they're not a big threat compared to what the Republican Party is doing. And I'm trying to say the Republican Party, not Republicans. I'm talking about the politicians and not just the voters, the people in office. And so I got to make that differentiation there.
For your time.
Thank you.
Have you lost any friends or family members to MAGA?
Yes, both of my parents are veterans, and I have watched them slowly go down a MAGA pipeline. They got divorced. My mom actually started becoming more liberal, and I was shocked until she got married again to another MAGA person. And they now watch a lot of YouTube, a lot of these videos, and I'm just like, this is not what you're supposed to see. This is not how you do things. And they're good people normally. My mom has been very accepting of trans individuals from my school. She uses their correct pronouns. She's for them being okay. But then she goes and votes for people that don't. And I don't think they understand the concept of how they are hurting people with the way that they vote.
What are they watching on YouTube, if you don't mind me asking?
I know Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
All the hits.
Charlie Kirk, I think, was one that they watched a lot of. A lot of the more popular ones, and I'm just like, why? It's so bad. They're not good.
Yeah.
If you fact checked anything that they said, you would realize, and I've had arguments with them about it, and I've shown them what is actually happening, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they still watch them. I'm like, really, guys? This is, yeah.
Have you had to go no contact?
I have gotten no contact with my father, but not with my mother. She understands the presence of do not talk about politics, but my father is a person who just calls everyone a libtard. So I'm like, I don't respect that. If you're not going to have a decent conversation with me and we can learn from each other, then I don't want to have a conversation with you.
Have you lost?
A couple of things here. One, it is scary how much a relationship can influence your political leanings. And it's also very unfortunate. I would also say religious leanings as well. And it's really unfortunate for the mom because it sounds like on her own, she is somebody that's a very accepting person. But then you get in a relationship, and in older relationships, a lot of times the man's going to dominate the philosophical state of the household and the religious state of the household. Not always, but a lot of the older relationships, you know, Gen Z, or Gen X and boomers, and maybe some millennials as well, that are, you know, growing up a little bit more, it's not the word, it's not conservative. I can't think of the word off the top of my head, like traditional. You might see that. And it's really unfortunate. And then the other half of that is a lot of times these decisions and these philosophical views are based off of ignorance, and they don't want to update their firmware in terms of information. They don't want to acknowledge certain things. They choose to be in denial and to be in ignorance, live in ignorance of certain things that are just true. And it's really unfortunate to hear that kind of stuff. But I want to go back again to listen to it because I had one other point that I wanted to make here.
They're not good. If you fact checked anything that they said, you would realize, and I've had arguments with them about it, and I've shown them what is actually happening, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they still watch them. And I'm like, really, guys? This is, yeah.
Have you had to go no contact?
I have gotten no contact with my father, but not with my mother. She understands the presence of do not talk about politics, but my father is a person who just calls everyone a libtard. So I'm like, I don't respect that. If you're not going to have a decent conversation with me and we can learn from each other, then I don't want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. So my other points was sometimes, don't ask, don't tell in your relationships is best, because at the end of the day, unless you're a politician, to a certain degree, your beliefs are not as important as a relationship. I say that for me personally, I don't want to associate with people that believe certain things, like certain lines in the sand, bigotry being a hard line in the sand. Like my parents and I still disagree on a lot of stuff, and I will call them out to their face whenever I hear it. And I also, if I detect that they're going down a train of thought or a conversation that I know that I'm going to have a hard line with, I will stop them to be like, look, let's not talk about this. Like my dad's very good on this. He won't do this. My dad is very good. I'm able to have conversations with him nowadays about most stuff where it does not get hostile or angry. My mother, it's a little bit harder, but I also feel like I've learned to be more open and honest with her in my older age and in her older age, and also identifying that like I would rather just have the relationship and not have an argument about something and not separate you from my, because if for me personally, this is just kind of how I work. I'm not saying I encourage this, but if my line is drawn in the sand, I don't mind cutting you off right then and there. Like that's just how I am, and I like being very open and honest about that. Right? Like I don't make it as a threat. I don't make it, because some people have accused me of what is the term? I can't think of it. Like making you feel guilty or threatening. Oh, threatening. Yeah. They would say it's threatening, right? If you believe this, I'm not going to associate with you. My family's not going to be like, I'll say my son, because I can't control my wife. I want her to make her own decisions. I don't want to control my wife. I don't lump her into it. I'll usually say me and my son, because while I believe my wife also has a say in who our son sees, there's only been like one time, well, technically two times, because I did it to my own mother as well, but like that was resolved. But also on my in-law side, I've said that, and I've been accused of threatening because I don't want people that I care about being around you. Now, from my perspective, like, I can see how that is perceived as threatening, but that's not a threat from my perspective. It is me explaining to you the outcome of your actions. There's repercussions for actions. And if I see you doing something, right, if people are doing something that I don't want to associate with, I'm not going to be around you, and I'm not going to let people I care about be around you unless they are a fully autonomous human being. But a child, nah, that's not happening. I'm sorry. And my wife and I will have a conversation about it. It's not like I'm not going to say anything to them, but it's only happened like one time, and we have that conversation and work that out. Now, that said, I'm not expecting everybody to have that kind of mindset, but if you don't have the skill set or the care to actually resolve your differences, and you have those hard lines in the sand, if you don't address them, like, on my in-law side, they're very passive aggressive. When I finally spoke up about how I felt to my in-laws, they were so surprised by how blunt I was, because while people who know me know I tend to be a very kind and caring person, I don't mind being blunt when I feel the need to be blunt about what I'm saying. I'm not going to sugarcoat shit. I'm going to tell you how I feel, and I'm going to tell you why I feel that way, because my brain is very logical for the most part, and I can explain how I feel and why I feel that way. A lot of people are not able to feel that way or do that, right? I've been a coach and a life coach for multiple years now, probably 10 plus years. Yeah. So I've spoken with a lot of people, and especially men have a hard time even understanding their own emotions or even recognizing how they feel in the current moment. They usually recognize how they feel based off of the aftermath that ensues from how they felt. They get mad. It's easier with gaming. They get mad, they get tilted, and they lose. And they play that back in their head, and they realize they lost because they got mad because they made a mistake, and then they kept thinking about it, and then they made another mistake, and then it just steamrolled or snowballed until they just lost the match, right? They don't recognize it in real time that they're feeling a certain way. And even if they do, they don't know how to take themselves out of it, or how to really recognize it to a way they can express it to their teammates to calm them down or something like that. And so even if you point it out to them, they deny it in real time. This is teenagers, this is grown adults. So I've experienced this in real time, and I've seen that a lot of people, it isn't just men, but it's just predominantly men in my experience, and according to statistics, that have that issue. So I believe in separating yourself from the problem if it continues to be a problem. But people who are very passive aggressive, they don't tend to do that. And these things just simmer. And then you feel that. Like, I would rather just separate myself, like the guy with the hat. I don't need that negativity in my life. Get it away from me. I'm not going to deal with this because I want to control my inner zen. If you have a phone in front of you, you're going to think about that phone. If you have YouTube up and open, but you're not watching it, you're going to be looking at it, and you're going to be tempted to want to engage in that thing. And then if you're engaging in that thing and you have toxic relationships, it's not bringing anything positive to your life. You're not able to focus on more positive things. You're not able to put more time and energy into positive things because you're putting time and energy into negative things that you're not going to get back. So that's my thought process on that.
Have you lost any friends or family members to MAGA?
I 100% have. Family members, I don't really know. I don't think so. I really only talk to the same few family members anyway. Friends, yes. And to that, I just say good riddance. This isn't, one of those situations where it's one side thinks, my taxes should be going here and this side thinks my taxes should be going here. This is my human rights. This is my rights as a black man. This is my rights as a gay black man, in this country. And I'm watching them getting stripped away in front of my eyes. So if you're not on the same side as me, you're against me. And I can't be friends with someone that's actively against me.
Understood.
So
what was the breaking point? What was the moment where they went further right?
What's so crazy is I didn't even realize I lost many friends or anything like that until I posted something about Charlie Kirk. And I ended up finding out from it was one of my college fraternity brothers. We all have dinner once a month, and he was telling me, he was hey, when I went to Indianapolis, our old college friend was yeah, I had to unfollow Tony because he went too far because he was cheering on Charlie Joe celebrating it. And it was funny because I don't have time to show you really quickly, but the two messages that I put about it had nothing to do with celebration, but it had everything to do with letting people know he was not a good person while he was here. These are the things he said. He actively believed that like that black people were better off in slavery and that the segregation was abomination. And I was like, how can I feel any type of grief or remorse or anything like that for someone that feels that way about me?
You weren't celebrating it. You were using his own words against him.
I used his words against him, and I posted on there of like, this is why people are reacting this way to his death. And apparently I lost a couple of followers from college. So
wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, this one I can relate to pretty hard. The being black thing, but also the Charlie Kirk part specifically. This is very benign in my opinion. I didn't lose anybody that I cared very deeply about. It was just people blocking me. But there were several times where there were people that said something, and I actually hope to have a follow-up conversation. I need to reach out to somebody, but there was somebody specifically, this is the best example I can think of, that put a post of like, if you think Charlie Kirk was a racist, you're an idiot. And I just very politely said, I'm sorry, but I disagree. And he's like, prove it or get the F out. And I sent him a video, I sent him a video of my live stream, the highlight of my live stream of a 45-minute breakdown of me, it's on YouTube now, but of me breaking down one of Charlie Kirk's YouTube videos and breaking down how he was being deceptive and how he actually is racist by what he's saying. If you really just take things at what they're saying rather than trying to read into it or one way or the other and just asking questions about his intent, right? Or why would that be relevant? So that person just blocked me. He didn't give me a rebuttal. He didn't say anything. He said, prove it or get out, right? Prove it or get the hell out. I took time out of my day to watch one of Charlie Kirk's videos from his own channel and show him how this is racist and how he is a bigot. And instead of actually engaging with me, this person blocked me. And I had several other people that like I'm disgusted by, but are still on my friends list that tried to defend people like Charlie Kirk or people like Trump. And I'm just like, I didn't realize some of these people were like this until Charlie Kirk died. And in some ways, it's a good thing for me because I'm at a point in my life now where, no, I don't want to be petty. I don't want to just block people from my life, but I'm trying my best to, with the rest of the life that I have left, to make this world a better place. And I don't believe bigotry belongs here. I want to make sure that I'm doing my part to expose and talk about and break down and give solutions to these issues. And when it comes to Charlie Kirk, I'm sorry, there's a hard line in the sand where you can't deny that this guy is a racist. Like, I can totally acknowledge that he said things sometimes that are considered not racist. Like, I'm not going to give you a damn lollipop because you said something not racist. Like, you're a content creator. I have to assume that you have an intent. Like, me as a content creator, it is okay and healthy for you to assume that there's an intent that benefits me by doing this. That is a good thing to do. I'm not saying you need to take action on it and just make assumptions and take action on those assumptions. However, I have intents for live streaming. How I feel about them is irrelevant. I mean, I've already expressed them in this video itself, but also in the past. But that's not my point. It could be to make money. And in that sense, you should question everything that I say. That is preferred. For me personally, that is preferred, that you question everything that I say, but you can't just assume or make assumptions about me because you have an issue with what I said. And it's the same thing with all of these guys. And, I already spent the whole 45 minutes. I'm going to be doing more Charlie Kirk videos, so I'm going to keep it brief here. But yeah, it sucks when you see somebody supporting something that is, at least in your perspective, very clear, but it is what it is.
Have you lost any friends or MAGA, or friends or family to MAGA?
Yeah, I'm an Italian American, so ironically enough, there's a lot of my family that is older and they hold a lot more of those like conservative values. Like, they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and they kind of have that like, I got my own mentality, and I really try to not hold it against them because it's almost exclusively from a place of ignorance or misguidance. People are being misled by religion or these other like false cult leaders, and it becomes very cyclical in that it kind of begets more delusion and more delusion. I try to have these conversations, and I pride myself on being someone that's like, I'm always willing to like come and sit down and be like, why do you think this? Like, what got you here? Because not enough of those conversations happen. It becomes a real stress point when we're willing to continue come talking and be a part of something, and they can't take it because it is based in like logic and empathy, and then they just pull out and they're like, I don't want to talk about this stuff. And it's not like I take that as like a moral victory or anything, but like I just wish that more of these people would be willing to talk about it. And you get to have conversations like this or an opportunity like this, maybe someone will see it and be like, okay, yeah, maybe I should have that conversation with my family member, with my friend, because I've had friendships stressed and strained, and it's not fun for anybody. No. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of people do want the same thing. They want everything to be better for everyone. They want healthcare. They want more affordable groceries. They want more rights for everybody. And we're stripping away all of those things, and it's like these injustices make it worse for all of us. And even if I'm a privileged-ass white guy, I have to be able to do something, because if it's not me, it's the people that are going to be the ones that are grabbed at protests. They're going to get pushed around, and I'd rather it be me than them. They already have to deal with more shit, you know? And at the end of the day, it's like family members, they're not thinking about that. Or friends, they're not thinking about that.
Do you remember when they turn right?
A lot of people of my family got onto it, usually like, it was around like 2012. They were like, oh, Trump's running, he's a business guy, he knows what he's doing. And then he actually got here, and they're like, no, he's doing some good stuff, but, you know, I can't agree with everything. And it's like, man, where's your spine? Where's your gall? Where's your passion? Where's your rage? You know, like, it makes me sick, these people. Just like, they're so scared of getting worked up, of being able to come out to an event like this. And, like, I'll be honest, like, I was terrified, to be honest, coming out here. My family's worried for me. My parents are like, you know, please be safe. You don't know what's going to happen. It could devolve, you know, if there's going to be people in the crowd that are going to start something. But we have to. These people, they're already, I fear, too deep. A lot of them since 2016. You got to think that's 9 years ago now, yeah. And that's kind of like what they've known. And for someone as young as me, that's like half of our life. I'm only 23, and these people are like, they go to church every day. And they're just kind of like told, like, follow what's good and, you know, have compassion and love. But the Republicans taking it and kind of like putting it all that under that guise, it strips out the willingness to talk about stuff.
Absolutely.
So I feel like this guy did a really great job of hitting a lot of points that are really important to just touch on. One, he really points out that these people that support Trump in that movement, a lot of times they support this because they're coming from a place of ignorance. And when you're aware that somebody else is ignorant and you're not someone who's just angry at everything, a lot of times, yes, you might feel frustrated, but there's also a level of concern and a level of what I would consider pity to these people, because sometimes you have to ask the question of how would they know, or how else would they think? Because everyone has their own lifestyles, and you have to think about people's experience. You have to think about their experience, their lived experience, and the access to internet or the access to information as they grew up. A lot of your habits as you're growing up into your 30s are going to condition how you behave onwards, right? So if you're used to living a certain lifestyle, you're going to keep getting your information from that source unless you're like really up on technology and you update your technology. Not everyone really does that once you hit a certain age. I noticed that in myself, where I have to force myself to really update my knowledge and stay up to date with current technology. I feel judgmental with new technology that comes out, and, you know, new video games that come out because I'm a gamer. But it's really important to understand that, yeah, it comes from a place of ignorance. But it's also important to understand, you know, for any Trump supporters, that even if it's coming from a place of ignorance, there's this understood sense that people who oppose Trump understand that what he is doing is infringing on people's ability to live their lives, their freedoms, their freedom of speech, several different constitutional rights. So it's really puts us in a hard spot where if you're voting for policies or people that support Donald Trump, then you're actively supporting fascism. And I'm not being hyperbolic by saying that. I could sit here and list off all the specific examples of how it is fascistic what Trump is doing and how the changes that he's making are fascist. I already talked about a few today in this video, but it just also makes it easier to just cover the topic that, yeah, what you're doing is you're supporting fascism when you're voting people in office that support Trump, when you're voting for policies, or when you're voting for changes that affect people or that you support that are done by Donald Trump. A lot of times, whether you're aware of it or not, you're supporting things that take away from other people. And I don't think a lot of people are logical to that. But if you have a gun pointed to my head and you somehow aren't aware to that, right? Like you don't realize that you're threatening my life. Do I still just pity you and not see you as a threat? Right? It is very challenging. And again, like, even if you disagree, what I'm trying to help you do for Trump supporters is to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand you feel threatened by somebody. It no longer matters whether or not that person is aware that they are threatening you or that they are dangerous to you and they are actively making changes that affect your life and take away from you. So yes, the approach might be different. Someone who has a gun pointed at you and isn't aware of it, you might be inclined to approach the conversation differently, right? Some people might be more diplomatic and just be like, hey, you might go the spider on your shoulder approach and be like, hey, don't move at all right now. And I'm like, why not move? There is a gun pointed at me right now. I'm going to step away so that it does not point at me, right? Maybe it's like in their purse or in their pocket or something, and somehow it's just pointed at you and you don't know whether or not the safety is off or it's loaded. And so you might go the spider on your shoulder approach. But if someone is like, hey, give me all your money or I'm going to shoot you, then that's a different situation. So I know that's not the best analogy, but it just helps to illustrate the point that your approach to the subject might be different, but your life is still at risk regardless of whether or not they are aware of the fact that they're threatening your life. So it puts us in a tough situation of like, yeah, that guy does not have great gun safety and he's not aware of it. So I don't want to associate with this person anymore. I'm sorry. I still love this person or I still care about them, but I cannot be around you because you are not safe for me to be around. You would not support the same things that I support. I'm very much, gun etiquette is very important and I can't be around you because you threaten me. And also I don't want my family anywhere around you because I don't want anything to happen to them either. And that's sort of what's happening in terms of like in a political way is that, yes, you are allowed to have your own opinions, but you have to understand whether you're making posts on Facebook or whether you're voting for people or whether you're supporting policies, you are actively helping people who are fascist do fascist thing. So when people try to downplay and dismiss the experience of people who are opposed to Trump, and when they try to downplay and dismiss people who don't want to associate with Trump supporters anymore, as if you guys are the victims in all of this, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry that. No, you are not the damn victims in this situation. You guys are the perpetrators, whether you are aware of it or not. And I don't blame these people who want to separate themselves from you. It isn't as simple as, oh, you disagree with me philosophically, you're just being a sensitive snowflake. No, dude, you got to understand, you are threatening them by supporting somebody who does things that are fascistic. That's what is happening here. And again, I don't expect you to agree with me, but what I want you to do is to see things from a different perspective, to think about things from other people's perspectives and why they react the way they react, because a lot of people suck at articulating themselves. And I will fully agree with that. A lot of people suck. In the black community, there are a lot of angry black people who deserve to be angry, but suck at articulating themselves in a way that is understandable or relatable to people that are not like them. And I fully support their anger, and I support themselves. I support their ability to support them. I support their efforts to express themselves, but I can criticize how effective it is when it comes to talking to people that don't agree with them. I'm not saying I'm super effective. I'm not on like CNN arguing with people. I'm not talking to who is it, Scott Adams? I forget the guy's name. Like, he's one of the people I want to do another video on and actually put it on YouTube, because there are some people who dismiss and downplay. And that's the last point I'll hit on before we get back to the video, is that if you're somebody that dismisses and downplays people's experiences, you should stop and ask yourself if you're aware that you're even doing that, right? Are you ask yourself, am I dismissing and downplaying what somebody else is saying? And if so, how does that make that person feel? And also, how would I feel if they did the same thing to me if I had the same level of concern about something? Because as we discussed already, the people who are opposed to Trump in a very expressive manner, it isn't just they don't like him. It's that we perceive Trump to be a threat to society, to humanity, to freedom. It is not some simple agree to disagree situation. It is no, you are supporting fascism and bigotry. And if the table was turned, if the flip was the script was flipped, how would you feel in that situation? So hopefully that makes some sense.
Have you lost any friends or family members to Trumpism and MAGA?
No, thank God I haven't. You know, but in what regard, like death or just mental health?
Like not being able, mental health technically, being not able to agree on anything. It's like you're talking to a wall to them.
Now, I don't have friends like that or family like that. You know, we all are basically proletariat in a struggle. You know, we all come from grassroots.
Yes.
Not saying that we're poor or destitute, but our values are grassroots. Because grassroots is the earth. Everything comes from the earth. The tree, the flower. Without trees, there'd be no flowers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We all come from something. We all belong to one another. And none of us can make it out of this world alone. Yep. And none of us can make it in this country alone. We need one another. No matter the complexion, no matter the ethnicity, we need each other. Right, it was founded on that. Melting Pot. How old are you guys? Did you guys see Schoolhouse Rock when you was a kid?
Of course, yeah. They played it in our school.
I really like what he said, and I really think it hits an important part of a point of friction with a lot of Trump supporters in particular. MAGA in particular are the people who are expressing themselves in a way that is very counterproductive, because what he says is something that I agree with. And as I said earlier, I might individually have a very conservative, I might have conservative, solutions that are more conservative that I think would work for me. However, like he said, we exist together. So a lot of times I'm going to support policies that are going to be considered more liberal, because if you think about things from a logical standpoint, if you think about a business, is a business going to be more successful if the employees work together cohesively or if they are sabotaging each other? You don't need to be a genius to figure out which is which. So the issue that I see is a lot of people, when they see things like universal health care, for example, that's something that I'm open to, right? That's something that I would consider voting for. That would be considered, a lot of people would say it's socialist or communist. It's not communist, first off. And you could consider it socialist, but that's besides the point, right? People are labeling a solution something and then trying to dismiss it or downplay it or villainize it because it fits into a category now. Oh, that's a socialist thing or a liberal thing. Attack it and then insult it. You have to admit that companies that have employees that work together, that are cohesive, that find solutions that work for everybody, they operate better. The same thing is going to apply to a country. So when people start doing this thing where they're like, oh, that's a socialist ideology, that guy's a socialist, when they're like Zoran Mandani, when they're talking about him and they're just calling him a socialist, Muslim, whatever, communist, extremist, they're not actually saying anything of substance. They're just throwing these labels at them because a lot of people, the average voter, does not know all the intricacies of what makes communism communism, what makes socialism socialism, and what doesn't make what isn't fit into those categories, and then what makes socialism bad, right? These people say socialism bad, but they can't even fully articulate why it's bad other than that it's taking stuff of mine and giving it to other people, when in reality, you're already doing that. So I don't get the logic, but that's a tangent from the main point. The main point is that people will just label what he's saying as communist or socialist, but he has a clear proven point that can be followed. And you look at businesses, and again, I went to school for coaching. It was like there's executive coaching and life coaching are very adjacent, right? The things that you learn for one are going to basically apply to the other. There are specifics and niches that you lock into and expand and further your knowledge on. But a lot of that is done experientially by working with clients in that specific field. So I've learned a lot of things that executive coaches do that I've read books that were required reading for my certification in coaching. And so it is something that I've been very aware of. And yeah, I just want to point out that this guy has a great point that we have to work together. And the origins of this country, while it is still debated in a very dumb way, we were a melting pot. We were a place that was supposed to welcome different philosophies and build a stronger nation together away from tyranny. And people now are, in my opinion, bastardizing that and then actively trying to label anything that goes against that as some sort of negative label. Right now, socialism is a negative label, and they're always trying to label it as communist. Like they're trying to put communist and socialist in the same little box and then just villainizing it. And they don't really need to do much else after that. But tell me how I'm wrong that working together and being a cohesive culture, right? I'm not saying that one culture needs to conform to the other traditions and things like that. I'm just saying that we operate and we find solutions together. When you go to work and you have a job and you have coworkers, you don't need to have the same religion as them. You don't need to have the same philosophical viewpoints as them, but you need to have solutions that benefit the company as a whole and make things better, ideally for both of you. Or there is some sort of equivalent exchange to where if maybe it's a little bit harder on you in the short term or maybe even the long term, or maybe you have to learn something new, which is inconvenient, but it makes the company as a whole operate better. That's my 2 cents on that.
It's always about Camilla.
It's okay.
Camilla. She's like Marsha. No.
Coming. I got to work on my Trump impressions.
No, it's okay. Rick. Lastly,
Rick the ruler.
Have you lost a friend or family member to MAGA?
Not real. I mean, some of my older, I have some older aunts and uncles who are pretty conservative, but I don't know how much, I haven't talked to them about this stuff. I don't know how much they're on board with everything that's been happening this presidency, especially. I know that they're the part of my family that originally were refugees from a Soviet, they're from Lithuania, which was under Soviet control. So I think anything that resembles, that reminds them of any way of socialism or communism, I think kind of scares them a little bit. Which is why they tend to lean kind of right. Like, it's understandable. I would probably feel the same way if I were them. And I had to live through the things they lived through. So, I don't really think I've lost anyone per se. I feel like they're still relatively agreeable just when it comes to basic human or American things, First Amendment things or Fourth Amendment things, or but I don't know. My brother used to be more conservative leaning, but he was never really a Trump fan per se, and I think as time has gone on, he's become a little bit more understanding of some of my points as a progressive, and he's just very individualistic, and I tend to be a bit more collectivist.
Have you lost any family or friends to MAGA?
Yes.
Yeah, why'd you vote for 35?
You just did. It comes to a moral issue with me. It's not a politics issue. It comes to morals. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm an emotional person. My students may not know my politics, but they know my politics. They know how I am. They know that what I represent. I wear T-shirts all the time that represents humanity, that represents loving each other, supporting each other. So the way I talk, the way I engage with people, it's always been they know my politics. They know how I am, and I think you can have conversations with Trump supporters, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're not in my orbit. I like to surround myself with people who believe in things like human rights, things like gay rights, things like, women's rights. You know, I just want to surround myself with people that let people just live. My beliefs don't hurt people. My beliefs don't hurt people. My beliefs don't hurt people. My beliefs about, you know, somebody having the right to, you know, marry somebody that they love. That's not hurting anybody.
Yeah, the last couple of videos really built on the things that I mentioned before with, you know, labeling something as socialist or communist and associating and separating yourself from people. Because, it's funny because I had this conversation at the Halloween party last night. We got into like we were around the campfire, and me being me, I started, you know, talking about things. And well, I wasn't the first one to bring it up. Typically I will unintentionally dominate the flow of the conversation in a way that leaves space for other people to express themselves. But a lot of times, most of my friends are people who are like her, and they care about human decency. But I do have some conservative friends that don't support Trump, right? So I have conversations with people who don't necessarily agree with me. And I'm because I'm not a Democrat, a lot of times I'm criticizing Democrats to their faces. Again, like, it's not always on stream or on social media, but it's to my friends. And, you know, I told my friends to my face that the Democrats need to be fired. So it's not like I'm not criticizing Democrats. I am. It's just usually off camera. Because I don't know as many conservatives in person as I do Democrats. But back to the point, it's the average person, right? I am actively making an effort to do something about the state of the country, but most people are just trying to live their life and improve the quality of their life through voting, right? And it's getting harder and harder to do that because on one level, I think the thing that's newer is that the level of impact that a politician can make on somebody's life, especially the president now, is much more impactful than it was before. I say that without, you know, I've only been able to vote since 2008. I think the first election I was able to vote for was 2008's election. And that was when I started to be more aware of politics, because on inauguration day of 2008 of Obama, I was in college. I was on college campus. And I remember one of my classmates, who I would consider a friend before this point, you know, it was on one of the TVs on campus, and it was just the inauguration day. I think it was the election results. Either way, my classmate, under his breath, goes, "Great. Now Air Force One is going to have spinners on it." Right now, if I knew this person better and I wasn't living in Alabama, I would have found that funny. But because I was living in Alabama and this person was, you know, someone more Southern, and I didn't know that guy well enough, it came off very racist, right? And if it's not racist, then why the hell? Tell me how it's not racist? Because Obama is so far from the stereotypical black person as can be. Like, yes, he's a black guy, so he's going to have a black family. He's going to express some things that are typical black culture, like the meme of him like dapping up people down the line, right? The Key and Peele skit. He's not. He's in my opinion unapologetically ethnic. Because I don't think he's just black. I can't remember what he is exactly, but he's not hiding his blackness, but he's not the stereotypical black guy that we see on movies and TV shows back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. So when someone says that under their breath, and I hear that from somebody that I didn't have any issues with prior, and he didn't seem like a very conservative, racist person. But when he sees this and he's mad just because Obama won, and to be fair, he was hearing some there were some loud black women in the back that were like happy about it. Like, yeah, we got a black president, right? Like, so to give full context, that was also happening in the background. Now there's a slur I've never heard of. What was a slur? What slur did I say? Spinners? No. Spinners are like a type of rim that go on wheels. Maybe I don't know if this is a thing anymore, actually. So just to clarify this, spinners on Air Force One would be spinning rims on the wheels, which was at that time associated very much so with black culture, a lot of rap culture, that kind of stuff. So when he said spinners, that's what that meant. I'm sorry for like the Gen Zs and people who did not grow up in like black areas or people with a lot of like black culture in it. So that's what he meant by that. Nothing as a slur itself. But yeah, so the context, full context was there were people celebrating. There were other black people happy about this because it does feel good to just have that representation. As a black person, seeing the first black president, I do not feel ashamed that I voted for someone primarily because I wanted to see a black president. I wanted to see somebody like me. And for anybody who's going to criticize that, I challenge you to tell me why you voted for every politician that you voted for. And you sit there with a straight face and tell me that it was only because of policies and not because of their personality. Now, even though he is black and I voted for him primarily at that time because he was, which I was in college, not the smartest person, I would not have voted for a black person if I felt like he was a threat and not a good representation of a black person. So it's not like I was the only reason why I voted for him, but it was a reason, and a big reason, that I do not feel bad about and will never feel bad about, because I wanted representation. That's why we vote for people in the first place, is we want representation. And if we've never had a black leader leading our country, then how the hell can I, as a black person, say that I feel represented? And I don't care if you're 40% of this country. I don't care if you're 10% or 1% or 0.5% of the country. Representation is important no matter what level of the amount that you are of the country, right? It does not matter if you're 1, 10, or 20%. Having some sort of representation is good, because if you don't, people are making choices for you that do not know your situation, and that sucks. So I appreciate when people are saying these things. There's a lot to build on when it comes to voting. And to circle back to what I was saying originally about, at the beginning of the video, that it might seem petty or extreme to separate yourself from Trump supporters, but as this video has helped to illustrate, there are very valid reasons that a person may have for wanting to separate themselves from Trump supporters. Because as I've said, and as other people have implied, people who support Trump are actively helping to take away the rights of individuals, whether that be immigrants here legally or illegally, immigrants that are here illegally that are doing things peacefully or not doing things peacefully. Those are there are lies that have been told about what was going to happen when Trump was put in office. When it comes to your freedom of speech, it is very clear that if you criticize Christianity or criticize the Republican Party, then, and we'll look this up after the video, but if you criticize Christianity, the Republican Party, stuff like Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump, you can be censored. You can be labeled as a terrorist. That's not hyperbole. Those are things that are written down. You can go to whitehouse.gov and see this. This isn't a matter of agreeing to disagree. This isn't a matter of people being petty because they don't want to associate with Republicans. This is, you are supporting something that is taking away the rights and freedoms and safety of millions and millions of people. And if you can't understand that, there's a problem. Even if you disagree with me, if you can't comprehend logically or emotionally what I'm expressing, and that this is a reality for millions of people in America, and how we can have 3 million people at the No Kings protest. I know those numbers are off, but 3 million plus people that are expressing that they don't like the current administration. And it's not just they don't like it, it's that they are a threat to society, to American culture. And you have to, as a conservative, you have to, as a Trump supporter, as a Republican, if you don't see a problem with what I'm saying, if you don't understand and comprehend what I'm saying, and you don't see how we see it as a problem, then you have to also understand that you're an individual or a group of people that are a threat to our safety. And if you are a threat, whether it is intentional or not, we don't want to associate with you. We want to get as far away from you as possible. And there are lines being drawn in the sand. And I am trying to do what I can to keep too many people from crossing a line that can't be uncrossed, because like myself, or like many other people, I believe that Donald Trump and his administration are going to continue to push their limits, and are going to continue to cross lines that can't be uncrossed until we get to a point to where things can't be resolved peacefully. I want things to be resolved peacefully. I am deeply concerned that things won't be. And this isn't hyperbole. This isn't paranoia. I strongly believe that we need to have more conversations, and more people on the conservative side, more people on the Trump supporting and MAGA side need to wake up. You need to be woke. Okay. The irony of the fact that the two things that y'all latch onto are anti-Antifa, you're anti-fascist, and you're anti being awake is laughably it is a parody of reality, that those are the two things that y'all have glommed onto. And the fact that y'all can't see that, and can't see the irony of what you're saying out loud in an unironic manner, is wild to me. But at the same time, I'd find that more funny if y'all weren't so dangerous. So even if you're just posting on Facebook, you're retweeting Donald Trump and what he's saying, or if you're retweeting Charlie Kirk, you have to understand this isn't a matter of just simply not liking your policies or your beliefs. This is, you are a threat. And I am trying to warn you and help you understand that what you're supporting is a problem. And what side of history you're on, we will remember. And I am trying to be a rational human being that is trying to help you see reason. I'm not telling you to, I'm not a Democrat, so I'm not even telling you to think like a Democrat. I'm telling you that even if you're a Republican, that's not a problem. But you have to understand that even if you're not doing anything, you're not on social media, you just happen to see this video and you've never expressed your opinions online, you are supporting a dangerous movement. And if you can't call out the people in your party, you're a hypocrite. If you can't call out the people that are doing these bad things, you don't have integrity. If you're not recognizing that this is a problem, you are ignorant, but you're still dangerous, and you're supporting fascism, bigotry, and hypocrisy. You're not supporting accountability. Now, the last point that I'll hit on is that just because I'm criticizing Trump supporters and Republicans, that does not mean that there aren't valid criticisms for non-conservatives, for Democrats. There is this issue that I see, and it isn't just conservatives, it isn't just Trump supporters. I see it all over the place. When your group is criticized, it's like, let's take this team. When I criticize the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys, you can't just say, well, the Eagles are losing too, though. Look at Philly. Look at them losing. I'm not talking about them. Let's say a player cheated, right? Tom Brady and the whole Inflategate. Well, look at Michael Vick doing the dog fights and shit. You know, that's a valid point. But why are you doing hey, look at that thing over there while I'm talking about something bad? There is this mindset where people think it's okay to point out something that they think is also bad. And I don't understand the logic there, because there's never a follow-up. Every time I see this, whether it be on social media, people that I'm talking to in person or online, people that I'm watching interviews and debates, when you say, but what about, but you're not willing to criticize the people that you affiliate yourself with, that is a damn problem. I will say it very slowly. You don't have accountability and you don't have integrity if you want a whataboutism, because all that you're doing is you are making a smokescreen to stop talking about a person or a problem that you are affiliated with. But you're also acknowledging and admitting that it is true. Okay? If somebody is doing SA and you're like, but what about Epstein? Yes, that is a problem. But what you just did is you're saying, yeah, the person that I'm affiliated with did those things, but let's not talk about it. Let's talk about this person over here. That is stupid. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're an independent or undecided. Stop doing that shit. It's not helpful. It makes you look like a dumbass, and it doesn't forward our country. It doesn't forward the conversation. So please stop the goddamn whataboutisms, because it is stupid. And please, if you've made it this far into the video and you are going to comment, if you say I'm a goddamn Democrat or I am liberal, I'm not talking to you, because you did not listen to a single damn word that I said. Okay? Because I will spread this across the board. Whataboutisms is a huge problem. And that, like saying all lives matter when people say Black Lives Matter, you're going to push people away from you, and they're going to perceive you as a threat, especially in this situation. So if you care about the state of our country, if you don't want to push people away, if you are someone who tries to make the best choices and educate yourself, you have to understand that you are supporting a movement that is a problem. It is a threat. It isn't some minor difference of opinion. It is a threat to safety and democracy and the freedom of speech. That's where I'll leave it.